is the power of math, people!
I've talked about this before, but it is really bizarre to me the level of vitriol that continues to permeate from people about disco-era Trek to this day. Star Trek Discovery's first episode, The Vulcan Hello, was released on September 24th, 2017. The upload date of the video you are watching now is towards the end of June 2021, and still, people are making bank off of hating something that is now roughly 4 years old. We do not deserve to exist as a species. However, I've stated before that there is a difference between hate and actual criticism. Unfortunately, most people on YouTube, both content creator and viewer alike, don't know the difference. But that doesn't mean there aren't huge things to criticize about Discovery. Today we're going to be analyzing the darkness aspect of both Legacy Trek and Disco-era Trek. That is to say, why is it that all of the elements that are found in Discovery and Picard exist within everything that came before it in Legacy Trek, but it still feels different? So before we really can break this down, it's important to understand the differences that really impact our psyche from what we had before to what we have now. First, some of the things may seem more graphic, more gory, and a large part of that is due to how technology has progressed and how it can be more nuanced. There are aspects of this even as early as the original series and the Next Generation. They just couldn't do then what we can do now, and based on what we see, they likely would have tried. The other thing to consider is what censors on television would allow versus what Discovery and Picard and Lower Decks are able to do while streaming. It is completely different. The internet is still somewhat of a Wild West in that aspect versus what it can be on TV. Also, I truly believe that a large contingent of people who are getting mad about this are likely millennials and boomers who are in their late 30s to 50s that remember Trek in their youth the first time they saw it. They originally watched it when they were in their single digits as kids, or even all the way up to their 20s. And Disco-era Trek shows them that the world is changing without them, and the nostalgia Trek that was, when they were young and innocent, well, it's gone. And as we know, when it comes to nostalgia,
nostalgia literally means the pain from an old wound. It's a twinge in your heart, far more powerful than memory alone.
But honestly, there is nothing in Star Trek Discovery that isn't in Legacy Trek. This includes, but isn't limited to, gore. Murder of innocent people, even if their creation was done by other evil people. Using chemical weapons against an entire colony.
Launch torpedoes. Commander, I said launch torpedoes.
Oh, and fans of this who try to justify that this is okay, they say it's okay to use chemicals on an entire colony, on an entire planet, because they're attacking terrorists. I mean, God bless red states in America, you can't make this stuff up. Moving on, you have Starfleet officers giving up all their morals and aiding and abetting murder, with that somehow being the good choice.
I lied. I cheated. I bribed men to cover the crimes of other men. I am an accessory to murder.
Actual sexual assault via having sex without someone's consent, them thinking you're somebody else, and then joking about it.
That's for making love to me under false pretenses. I was suspicious of you from the start.
You hit it well.
If you ever touch me again. Did you get my point?
I hope not.
Straight murder of an innocent person via transporter.
Doesn't anyone see that this is wrong?
Mocking a sexual assault victim.
One of the first things a diplomat learns is not to stick his fingers where they don't belong.
and character assassination by making them stupid, like Spock and Bones in Turnabout Intruder and not realizing it wasn't Kirk. And there's much, much more. Discovery has certainly done all of these things, and as I've said, they ramped those incidents up to 11. So while the premises are the same, I don't think any good faith actor would deny that Discovery has done it far more graphically and more nuanced, putting it right in your face and focusing on it versus it being an offhanded joke or having one or two scenes. So taking all of that together, it seems to me that the difference is the spirit in which something is written and the era that it was written in. The original series and The Next Generation were written with the thought of humanity striving to be something better than itself and reaching a pinnacle. The Federation was ultimately overcoming its baser negative emotions and moved forward. Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise were being written moving into the darker era that we see today, so they plunged the Federation into reality with flawed individuals that would do horrific things, but tried, as much as humanly possible, to be humans that TNG and TOS would be proud of. Discovery, Picard, and even Lower Decks to a small degree, have embraced the current era of dystopian future with only brief flashes of the Federation we saw before. Now, Trek series are, supposedly, writings of the era they're in. I'd question TNG being such, but let's just go with that. Right now, we see a deeply divided world. It's ironic to me because on Twitter, the cult of Batleth Babe would swear that I'm a neo-Nazi that hates all of Trek as well as being homophobic. That's ironic, given I'm bisexual and want to marry Jesse Gender, but whatever. And then on YouTube, I'm the largest US-hating, queer-loving, by the way that's the words of the commenters, not me, liberal simp for Kurtzman that has ever been seen. I mean, the internet, it's fantastic. And all these people are divided about a person who talks about a fictional universe. So you can imagine what politics are like. But on all of this mess of the real world, Discovery and Picard are trying to reflect the age and the discussions that are being had. And honestly, in this day and age, if you wanted to have those discussions and you wanted to write something that was like TNG or even DS9, that would be very, very hard to do. And there's another problem too. Quite frankly, Discovery Season 1, when we look at the crew and the cast and the entire production of Discovery, they were open about how they didn't like people who didn't agree with them. It wasn't just the ideas, they didn't like the people. They were brazen that they were right, and anyone who believed something against their opinions, well, those people were portrayed as racists in the show. Star Trek Discovery Season 1 didn't care about Star Trek. They didn't care about expanding the mythos. They cared about pushing an agenda, about using Trek as propaganda. And this isn't my opinion. This isn't something that I'm using to make Discovery haters watch my content. Trust me, they don't. This is actual truth. Go and look for yourself. Look at behind-the-scene dialogues and references used by the creators. Star Trek Discovery Season 1 is the most antithetical season to Star Trek's original purpose that has ever existed. And every person that worked on that season, from the actors all the way up, should be absolutely ashamed of the division that they caused. Even if we assume everything they were saying was right, they made it so that their worst fears were more likely to happen. That said, from Season 2 and on, I don't think this was the case. Discovery Season 1 certainly set the divisive tone, sure, but Season 2 actually tried to bring more people together, and now I think they're making Trek for everyone. Well, they're making Trek in the way they want to, but they're open to anyone watching it. They weren't before. And honestly, that said, if I'm being honest, if I'm just looking at what writers and executives have written in the past, Discovery Season 1 was probably just a mask-off moment for a lot of them. From the original series, all the way to Enterprise, there was underlying sentiment with some that had existed in one form or another. Again, generally not with the showrunners, but with some of the writers and even the cast. However, during that time, they couldn't really say anything or be upfront. Regardless of what people like to think, in the early 90s and 2000s, Trek had to deal with TV censors and an, honestly oppressive, conservative bent within society. So those behind the scenes had to play along and just drop hints. If you don't believe me, look at the behind the scenes dialogue, especially at TNG and DS9, and the original series here and there. When Discovery Season 1 came out and the old guard had been removed, I think it was probably a bit of an overcorrection. They had buried it so deep that they had to just come out like they did. It was a bad decision, but at least you can understand where it came from. But I've kind of wandered off the path of where I was going a bit. to bring it all back in, what is the difference between Discovery and DS9, or Kurtzman era and Legacy era? Well, at least for Discovery Season 1 and 2, and to a degree Picard Season 1, I'd have to say it's the spirit of the writing. Star Trek, even at its darkest moments, which I think most would agree is found overall in Deep Space Nine and Voyager, had the idea that Starfleet was ultimately an ideal, that humanity was trying to be better than it was, that the unreasonable choices that our heroes made sometimes that resulted in death was because they were trying to be honorable, and they were trying to make humanity better and make the galaxy better. Even when the shows were unrealistically dark, the hope was to ultimately show the light from within, well, really from within all of us, what we could be. The point of Discovery was to first show off diversity and correct issues that had occurred in Trek and other media. To go off the path a little bit, they were trying to normalize homosexual relationships, trans relationships, and more. It was very focused on the LGBT+. While some bad faith actors will try to say, well, this was done in Legacy all the time, it honestly was either people trying to rewrite history, them trying to say, oh, look, it's in Legacy, so you don't have to do it in Discovery, or what we're looking at is one-off scenes that had very little merit. Yes, they did have two people of the same gender kissing. Ironically, it was only females, but we're not even going to get into that. But they never really looked at the relationship beyond a few scenes, or maybe an episode if we're lucky. They never leaned into it. Discovery did, and it deserves some accolades for that. And while I'm glad this is an addition, it's paired with a dystopian world with right-wing and left-wing toxic populism in the writing. The spirit, the light of Starfleet and the Federation, it's not really there. Honestly, it's ironic. It's like a reverse of Legacy Trek, where you have a one-off scene or dialogue here and there that pays lip service to the spirit of Trek, but it's not. So in a way, Starfleet ideals are the LGBT+ of the 90s for Discovery. It's never something really focused on. The writers and the executives either forgot the core tenet of what Trek had been, or they just didn't care. They didn't care what its original purpose was. The darkness of Legacy Trek was always overshadowed by the need of utopia and what it did for people. It's Star Trek. But what we're seeing here, what Discovery is, or was basically the Expanse light. With the caveat that they really did focus on diversity, they did some good stuff with the LGBT+, humanity overall being better was never really a part of its mythos. Humanity being more than the sums of all their parts was just gone. I'm going to end it this way though. After pissing off every Discovery and Picard-loving Twitter keyboard warrior that isn't happy unless they're kissing the feet of some Twitter handle, I'll go ahead and make everyone else mad. The change that we see in Discovery is not inherently bad, especially in Season 2. Trek has always tried to do new things and be different, and even changing the premise of Trek, that's not bad, it's just different. A new generation has taken this new era of Trek, and that's okay. We're not going to get what existed before. They honestly couldn't even make it if they wanted to. Who we were and what we enjoyed then, those people are long dead. If you're my age and you first saw Trek as a kid, literally no cell in your body right now, none of them exist anymore. Not at least that exists then. That person is dead. You're someone new. You are physically, literally a new person. And it's quite likely that the new person that you are would not enjoy Trek the way you did. When you watch it now, you're watching it and enjoying the shadows of who you are. That's not me trying to be dark, it's just honest. That's how nostalgia works. And I'll say it's been 4 years. You guys are right, it's different. It's completely different, but that's not bad. And if you don't like this, if it just doesn't really speak to you, there are other things to enjoy. Because quite honestly, even in Discovery Season 3 and Lower Decks, the spirit isn't the same, but I don't think it ever could be. These are all just my opinions, though. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.